The
Starting.
broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're just going to wait for a few more folks to join, and then we'll get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar series from NFSN and our partners. We're happy to have you on today. There's about 140 folks signed up, and people are joining very quickly, so we'll go ahead and get started. Just some initial housekeeping items that just to let everybody know this will be recorded. So if you'd like to share the webinar in the future, it will be on our resource database page and also be sent out to you folks in a follow-up. Secondly, if at the end of the two different parts, there will be a sort of a pause for questions, and if you'd like to type in your question to the right of the your webinar box, we will answer those effectively as possible. So let's get started. Thank you all for being here. Natalie, can you put your thing on mute while I'm talking? I'll do the same. I think we're getting a little echo. Moving on, this is, as you know, leveraging state and farm-to-school networks to affect legislation. And I want to thank Natalie for being with us today. She's going to go over what they have done in Hawaii and how they've set up their advocacy plan to make change for farm-to-school programs in Hawaii. And thank you all. As you know, I'm Maximilian Merrill, the NFSN Policy Director that helps with all our core and supporting partners in sort of strategizing how they can better advocate for policies in their areas or territories. The agenda today is we're going to have a brief overview of sort of what Farm to School and NFSN is, since it is an open webinar. Just want to make sure people are all on the same page. Then we're just going to lightly touch about state farm to school policy and sort of the changes going on all across the country. And we'll go over sort of what we've noticed in the last 10 plus years. And then Natalie's going to touch on farm to school advocacy in Hawaii, Aina in schools, I think I said that right, Natalie, and Hawaii Farm to School Gardens. And she's going to sort of show us how they have moved forward in their advocacy and pushed more farm to school programs in their state. And then we'll open it up to questions. So moving on, what is farm to school? As many of you know, its core elements of farm to school is agricultural and food education, local procurement, and also school gardens. We believe that these core elements are all needed to, establish good local economies, good communities, and also to change eating habits and to provide that nutritious food. Without these three core elements, we think there is definitely a missing component of what farm to school truly is. Why should we have farm to school in our states and territories? Well, it's because kids win through nutritious food and better diets. Farmers win because they can supply this nutritious food, and it can establish, this local procurement can establish better local economies, and communities win when everyone gets involved, when the school gardens are associated with volunteers and the farmers are associated with some of the agricultural education. It takes those three core elements and it sort of expounds it to the whole community. So that's why we believe this is sort of what we call a triple win, if you will. Our network is very wide. We have over 15,000 network members and core and supporting partners in almost all the states and territories. As you can see here, we have an advisory board and, of course, a national staff as well. And this whole network helps to move the movement that you'll see is growing exponentially in every one of our states and territories. So what NFSN is, we have a lot of core functions, but mostly we're an information and network and advocacy hub for the core and supporting partners to share with each other their successes and failures, and to help everyone work better and work together. And we connect people with resources. We connect people with these webinars and policy calls that we're having today, and we connect people with many type of conferences and get-togethers like I'll talk about right now. If you'd like to get more involved, or if you're already involved and you're not coming to the National Farm to Cafeteria Conference, please do. You can go on our website and sign up and register. It's a very fun conference where you meet folks from all walks of life working on, farm to cafeteria and farm to school and farm to, institution, and how you, at this conference, everybody figures out a little better way to do things in their own personal lives. So there's a lot of energy at this conference, and I don't think any of you want to miss it. So please sign up and register when you get a chance. So moving into some of this main meat of our presentation today, as some of you folks may know, we keep track of the different state farm to school policies that sort of sprout out all over the country in each of the legislatures. And we put out this legislative survey, try to get it out every year. Sometimes it's every year and a half or every two, but it's a very extensive survey of what's going out there, who's proposing all the different farm to school policies in the country, and what's working and what's not working. As you can see, we have some case studies in this survey, and it's a great guide if you're looking to do more in your state or territory. It's a great guide to show your decision makers what's going on in different parts of the country, and it's a great guide to see the many different types of farm to school policies there are out there. So as you can see, this is not just a fun sort of policy movement. This is a very large nutrition and farm to school movement that's going pretty strong. And in the last two to 3 years, there have been over 200 farm to school policies proposed in our state legislatures and territories. We're going like gangbusters, folks, and we're very proud of that. And we're very proud that, that our data and research shows that farm to school programs work, farm to school programs are fun, and farm to school programs are economic drivers for our local economies. So this is a testament to many of you folks that are on the webinar right now, but it's a definite testament to our core and supporting partners who have done the really hard work. And Natalie is going to talk about that very shortly. Um, Here's another map showing the legislative trends and where in the country is doing some good work and where we need to focus to increase farm to school policies. States like Oregon and New Mexico and Alabama and North Carolina are pushing farm to school policies almost on a yearly basis. And as a national network, we have to keep track of these type of things, and we're looking to target some of the states that may or may not be, for different reasons, working on farm to school legislation. And we look forward to working with those states in the future. So moving on, some of the top categories we noticed in our legislative survey. I'm a lumper, not a divider, so I had to lump a few of them together, as you can see here. But there's about 7 different categories. You can actually separate it even more, and you'll see in the next slide. But some of the categories include state farm to school coordinators. We believe this is a very important position. It can be in both the Department of Agriculture or the Department of Education. We believe both is we believe that it's important to have both coordinators in each one of the departments, because they can do different logistical things and work different angles in agencies. There's permanent or pilot farm to school programs. Now, these can help promote local procurement, school gardens, and food education. Usually these are types of grant programs, and to help sort of spur local school districts to do farm to school in their school districts. There's funding mechanisms to offset the school costs through appropriations or grants or reimbursement structures. There's just establishing local preference laws to encourage and require state agencies to include locally purchased locally purchased foods in schools, or even agencies. And this type of policy does not usually cost much for in the appropriations, state or territorial appropriations. This is just giving encouragement for agencies or schools to preference local foods. Something even more simple is an online statewide farm to school database or directory. This is basically a logistical issue. A lot of schools don't know where to purchase, say, tomatoes or lettuces or snacks, carrot snacks, and something like this can be really simple and very cost effective to help the local farmers in the area and the local schools trying to connect. Task force and councils and working groups is one way to help push farm to school policies and get those ideas working together. And then also there's other broader policy initiatives that include farm to school. And these can be different initiatives that help strengthen policy, public health, and food security and economic equality. This could be wellness policies. This could be local food policies and things like that. So just to show, what the strength is and how the movement has been moving very exponentially in the last couple years, since 2015 till March 30th of 2017. That's when we sort of stopped the survey, and we will be updating that survey very soon. But you can see that proposed versus enacted, 15 proposed farm to school coordinator positions in 2015 versus 23 in 2017. You can see the growth in the different types of policies. 56 proposed appropriations for farm to school programs being proposed and in 2017 there was over 132 proposed policies and legislative pushes, and 25 have been enacted. So that's a great testament to the core supporting partners that we have all across the country. And you can see here there's many different changes and growths in the different types of farm to school policies that we have to work with to encourage local procurement, school gardens, and also agriculture and nutrition education. We're seeing not much growth out there for farm to preschool, and that is one thing one of our program managers at NFSN is working to increase throughout the country. So before we switch over to Natalie's discussion, are there any questions? Okay, well, seeing none, and there will be time for questions at the end. I will hand it over to Natalie.
Great, thank you so much, Maximilian. Aloha, my name is Natalie McKinney, and I'm the Executive Director of Kōkua Hawaiʻi Foundation. And I'd like to give you folks all a brief snapshot of our state Department of Education. We have a little bit of a different makeup than all of the rest of the states. Next slide, please. So Hawaii is one unified school district. We are the 9th largest school district in the United States. We service approximately 180,000 students. There are 256 public schools, 36 charter schools, and those schools span 6 different islands. The fiscal year 2018 operating budget for the Department of Education is nearly $2 billion, and 1.6 of that comes from our state's general fund. Next slide. So just a little bit about Kōkua Hawaiʻi Foundation. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization founded in 2003 by Kim and Jack Johnson. And Jack is a local musician here who's a graduate of public schools. And our mission is we support environmental education in the schools and communities of Hawaii. Next slide. Our mission is to provide students with exciting and interactive encounters that will enhance their appreciation for and understanding of the environment so that they will be lifelong stewards of the earth. We have 5 main programs at the foundation. Next slide, please. And they all funnel into and support farm to school. So we have small grants for field trips to offset the cost of getting students to environmental destinations. We've seen an uptick and have been promoting farm field trips via this grant mechanism. We also provide small grants to schools. They're mini grants up to $1,000 per school year to offset the cost of an environmental or sustainability initiative on their school campus. We've also seen an uptick in grants coming in for agriculture, whether that be aquaponics, hydroponics, school gardens, waste diversion programs, and the like. We also, the first program at Kōkua Hawaiʻi Foundation was the 3R school recycling program, and recycling within the Department of Education on all Oahu schools, which is the main island, has been institutionalized. So our 3R school recycling program coordinator has been working with schools doing waste audits of cafeterias and setting up waste diversion programs within schools as the next layer to reducing and reusing and recycling. Some of that food is being sent to farmers, and some of it is just being data collected and then thrown away. We have another waste diversion program. It's called Plastic Free Hawaii, and this is kind of our attempt to kick it up a notch around recycling. And we encourage the minimization of single-use plastics. We work directly with schools, and schools have been effectively trying to eliminate disposables from their school cafeterias, moving to reusable plates as well as utensils, and sometimes moving from styrofoam trays to paper trays. And then the crown jewel at Kōkua Hawaiʻi Foundation, and what I'll be speaking about through the rest of the presentation, is our Aina in Schools program. Next slide. So Aina is a Hawaiian word that has a few different meanings, but it means food or land or that which feeds us. And we've used the word Aina as an acronym for actively integrating nutrition and agriculture in schools. And the main mission of this particular program is to connect children to their land, water, and food to grow a healthier future for Hawaii. We have three main goals, and these are very prevalent in all farm-to-school programs and just by nature farm-to-school. So that's addressing childhood health, fostering environmental stewardship, and supporting a healthy food system. Next slide, please. So this program was launched in 2006. Our program is 12 years old, and we currently work directly with 23 Oahu elementary schools. We have written and developed a K-6 curricula, standards-based, multi-subject, hands-on, with lessons that cover nutrition education, garden-based learning, and compost education. We've also been partnering with the Hawaii State Department of Education to provide professional development courses around this curriculum, and to date have trained nearly 500 teachers from 248 schools and organizations throughout the state. We work directly with the Department of Education to offer teachers professional development credits to help them move up the pay scale, and have found increased interest and participation in these professional development courses. Next slide. Last year, we started evaluating our program, and I just wanted to share a little bit of the benefits that we have, or the results that we have identified through our survey of pre and post student surveys around the curricula. And it's that more than half of the students had increased knowledge and preference for eating fresh fruits and vegetables following implementation of a year in programming. And then approximately a third more of those students reported cooking, composting, and gardening behaviors at home in post surveys. And one of the things that we ask the students is what does Aina mean to them? And one of our favorite quotes is, "My favorite thing about Aina is that we're doing it for a good cause. We have fun doing it, but we also know that we are helping the earth." So that directly points to we are meeting our mission to give these children experiences that'll help us all as a planet. Next slide. So in 2007, the National Farm to School Network was formed, and this was a year following the launch of our program. However, we had been in communication with many of the leaders from the Farm to School Network during this time. In 2010, the USDA launched their Farm to School program. And then in 2010 as well, stakeholders throughout the state of Hawaii started the Hawaii Farm to School and School Garden Hui. Next slide. And what this is it's a network of stakeholders made up by different island networks. So each of the islands has a school garden or farm to school network. And we also include state agencies such as the Department of Education, the Department of Health, the Department of Agriculture, the Child Nutrition Office, large private schools here in Hawaii like Kamehameha schools, as well as over 100 independent schools throughout the state. We convene on a quarterly basis and identify opportunities as well as obstacles and roadblocks, and work together as a collective in order to move the movement forward here in Hawaii. Next slide. So one of the first things that we did as the Hawaii Farm to School and School Garden Hui was we launched a statewide school garden survey. So at the time when the Hui was formed, there was no data around how many school gardens are in the state, how many schools are participating in agriculture and nutrition programming. And so we wanted to get a baseline. And so what we learned is that 168 of the schools had school gardens, and that 30 acres of land throughout the state was being utilized for school gardens. We also asked what grade levels we saw school gardens appearing at, and as you can see, primarily in the primary grades, not too much in pre-K in 2012. And then we also identified when school gardens are being used. So majority of them were being used during classroom time. Next slide. So as part of this partnership with the Department of Health and the Hawaii School Garden Hui, the Department of Health does an annual survey. It's the Health Safety and Wellness Survey, and it goes out to every single school in the state. And they primarily are doing a survey around wellness policies and implementation and utilization of the wellness policies throughout the state. but our partner at the Department of Health was able to include a question on the SAWS survey about school gardens. So we asked, does your school have a school garden? And then what instructional areas are those school gardens being utilized for? So here I'm showing results from the 15-16 SAWS survey. And what we have identified is that 83% of Hawaii's public schools have a school garden and use it for instruction. Something also that we found very interesting, and you might as well in your state, is that 51% of these school gardens are being utilized for integration in science. Next is Hawaiian studies, health education, and moving all the way down through fine arts, PE, and world languages. So we're seeing a really cross-cutting section of utilization of school gardens around instructional implementation. Next slide. I think what's really important is that we utilize this data a lot in a lot of the work that we have been doing towards the legislature. So in 2014, we attended the we meaning members of the Hawaii Farm to School and School Garden Hui, we attended the National Farm to Cafeteria Conference, and there was a half-day breakout session around state policies and legislation. And what we identified was that the state of Oregon had two positions, one in their Department of Agriculture and one in their Department of Education, with farm to school coordinators. And what we also learned is that through legislation and establishing farm to school coordinator positions was probably going to be the best way to move the farm to school movement forward in Hawaii. As I had shared, most of the participating members of the Hui are nonprofit organizations, and a majority of the programming around farm to school is being implemented and paid for by nonprofit and private institutions. So in 2014, we did a survey of all state level programs through our Hawaii Farm to School coordinator. We reached out to all of the different states and took an inventory of how many schools had school garden coordinators and where those school garden coordinators were housed. We identified that we wanted to model Oregon and that we wanted to push for Department of Agriculture and Department of Education farm to school program coordinators. So in 2014, we had a farm to school conference, and this was a different type of conference than we had hosted in past. In the past, our conferences had typically been for educators, and we really wanted to use this conference as a launching point to invite legislators as well as high-level state government and employees to let them learn about what farm to school is and to let them know that we are going to be asking for some positions in two different departments. So it was at this farm to school conference that the chairman of the State Department of Agriculture, he said that he would indeed support a bill for a farm to school coordinator in the Department of Agriculture. And that was really kind of a turning point for us. So in 2015, January of 2015, we hosted a farm to school legislative breakfast. What we did was we got a conference room at the Capitol and we invited legislators throughout the building. We utilized the Hui, which is our network, the day prior to the conference, and we all canvassed the Capitol and invited all of the legislatures from our particular districts to this legislative breakfast. At this breakfast, we had panelists from the Department of the State Procurement Office, from the University of Hawaii. We even had students on the panel that were touted the benefits of farm to school and the importance of these positions within our state agencies. It was a tremendous success. It was standing room only. The food was as much local as we could possibly procure, and a lot of the legislators had a really clear understanding of primarily what farm to school was and what we were asking. So that legislative session, we had tremendous success. We were able to get a state level farm to school program and coordinator established in the Department of Agriculture. Unfortunately, the Department of Education asked to be removed from the bill. They said that they weren't quite ready for a farm to school program And so instead of kind of fighting the system and including them in that bill, we decided that it would be best to just pull them out. And we did get a win, and we do have a farm to school program and coordinator currently housed in the Hawaii State Department of Agriculture. Next slide. And so in that year, that farm to school coordinator position was established. Another interesting thing was that, and this was leading up to this, a Farm to School Plus working group was established at the Capitol. And so Farm to School became something that legislators were very familiar with the term. Part of what had come out of the 2015 legislative agenda was there were many different organizations that were asking for funding around agriculture education. And the legislature identified that they needed to kind of get an overview of ag education throughout the state. So they asked for a report on P20, P is preschool and 20 being post-secondary education, a P20 assessment of ag education throughout the state. So at that time, we rallied and convened the P20 Ag Education Working Group. And it was simultaneous to this that the lieutenant governor had identified that farm to school was something that he wanted to be his legacy. And so he convened the Hawaii Farm to School Advocacy Group, and we began having meetings in the lieutenant governor's office, as well as in conjunction with the P20 Ag Education Working Group, which was overseen by the University of Hawaii College of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resources. And so we had some pretty high level folks who were now engaged in farm to school and really understood the three prongs of farm to school, the education piece, the school garden piece, but most importantly, the procurement piece. Next slide. So in 2016, we had a tremendous number of successes. The lieutenant governor did launch the Farm to School initiative, which really focused on procurement. And as I shared, because we're one unified school district and the Department of Education serves 100,000 school lunches a day, the procurement and the school food piece was really a nut that the nonprofit sectors were unable to crack. So with the help of the lieutenant governor, we were able to bring in a contractor, identify a pilot complex, and systemically work to increase the Hawaii Department of Education's purchasing of local food. We increased local food purchasing by 40%. We increased student participation by 5%. We increased student consumption of the healthy food as well as by 40%, decreased food waste by 10%, and the initiative became cost neutral. And so that was a tremendous success. We also had Farm to School Month established as a proclamation that year. And that year we submitted our report to the legislature around our P20 Ag Ed findings. And one of the most interesting findings that we had was throughout an entire year of meetings, it was very difficult to have somebody identified from the Department of Education that would attend these meetings, that them not having a farm to school program or someone charged with farm to school became very, very evident during this time. It also became very clear that middle schools became the place where there were huge gaps in education around farming and agriculture. And this report was submitted to the legislature. Next slide. And so as I shared, the Farm to School initiative was launched by the Lieutenant Governor's office. And then we also were able to pass an act that designated October as as Farm to School Month throughout the state of Hawaii in perpetuity. This is much different than our proclamations in years past, where we would have to go to the ledge every year and ask for a proclamation. We now have institutionalized Farm to School Month in Hawaii during October to align with National Farm to School Month. So it was out of the outcomes of the Lieutenant Governor's initiative, that the Department of Education identified that they were really interested in moving the needle on local purchasing, scratch cooking, as well as reduction in waste in school cafeterias. And so they internally had decided that they were going to jump on the farm to school bandwagon, and they launched the Aina Pono program. As I shared before, Aina is the Hawaiian word for food, and Pono is the word for right or righteousness or good. And so what that kind of loosely translates to is good meal, good food. And in 2017, the Department of Education announced that they were going to ask for 2 farm-to-school positions in the upcoming 2018 budget. So I just want to point out that the Department of Education launching the Aina Pono program and inclusion of 2 farm-to-school positions in their 2018 budget all came internally through the Department of Education with no legislation asks needed on this part. The Department of Education has completely bought in and are completely on board with farm to school, which is really exciting. In this slide, you see our governor as well as the chairman of the Department of Agriculture. During school lunch week and the first week in farm to school month, they featured local meals at the pilot project area. As well as you can see on the plate here, we have almost 100% local meal. On the upper left, those are sweet potatoes, that is pineapple. All of the pineapple that's served in the Department of Education is canned pineapple, although we grow pineapple here in Hawaii. So that is local pineapple. On the right, you have brown rice with kalua pig and cabbage. That's kalua pork, which is it's steamed. And then in the bottom left there, that is poi, which is made from the taro plant, which is an indigenous food of our state. So you have a almost 100% local plate there, which was really, really exciting. Next slide. So in 2018, we realized that we do need to have some legislative asks. So this is what we are asking for. We are asking for 3 things in the legislature. We are asking the legislature to establish a farm-to-school program and include and fund these 2 positions that the Department of Education is asking for. The budget needs to be funded through the legislature every year, so we need to go through this process in order to get those staff positions established and funded. The second is we would like to provide general funding for the Department of Agriculture's Farm to School program. That was one of the missteps in our legislative work, was that when we got the Department of Agriculture Farm to School position established, we did not ask for funding. So we're going back to the ledge and asking for funding for this position. And we're also asking for them to establish a pilot farm to school grant program within the Department of Agriculture. And then lastly, we're looking to create a local procurement purchasing policy for the state, which will help purchasers navigate regulations for the procurement of more locally sourced foods. So these are our 3 asks for the ledge this session. And next slide, we will be doing another legislative breakfast next Thursday, and where we will be the same thing on Wednesday. The Hawaii Farm to School Network will be canvassing the Capitol, and we will be inviting our legislators to come to this breakfast. We will be featuring a locally sourced breakfast. We have engaged with our culinary arts students throughout the state and asked them to provide some of the food. And then we will be sharing the three legislative efforts that we will be pushing for this upcoming session. We know that at the current time, agriculture education is very important here in Hawaii, as is agriculture at large. In Hawaii, we import between 85 to 90% of all of our food. So not only is the Department of Agriculture's increase in local not just purchasing, but growing of food important, but it's also a very important economic driver for our state. And that is it. We have had tremendous success throughout our state in regards to farm to school programming, as well as the network that has worked cross sections with institutions, state agencies, the public and the private sector. And it's a really exciting time here in Hawaii. We've really taken our lead off of other states such as Oregon, who have tremendous programs there. And we always turn to what's happening nationally in order to inform and encourage our state legislatures to jump on the farm to school bandwagon. So at this time, I'm happy to take any questions or any comments, or anything that anybody.
Natalie, thank you very much for that. That was even very educational for me as well, especially with your new initiatives, and your crowing rooster out back was a very nice touch. We've heard them a couple of times. There is one question proposed for you right now. Someone asked, Carrie Martin asked, how was the Lieutenant Governor's initiative cost neutral?
They were able to decrease food waste. So part of the initiative was that they did some menu development, and so they worked with the cafeteria staff and students to approve recipes that the students and the cafeteria staff liked. They trained the cafeteria staff. They tracked the data. So what they did was they were measuring food waste before and after, front of house and back of house, and then managing that food waste. And so they had identified that there was a lot of food waste coming from back of house, which they were able to effectively eliminate to bring down a lot of the costs, as well as increase participation. So when you increase participation, you increase the revenue that's coming into the cafeteria.
That sounds like a easy research study that needs to be written up. So I thank you for that comment. Any other questions out there? There is one other question. There was a question for me, but I want to make sure while you're hot, we will get to you. Would you be willing to share your evaluation goals?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay, and how did you track data to present to the legislatures?
So we track data in a variety of different ways. One was through the school annual wellness survey. So all schools have to indicate if they have a school garden on an annual survey and how it's utilized. We also were able to identify this data from the Lieutenant Governor's office, as well as each of the different organizations throughout the state that is doing work in this particular area. We also utilized the National Farm to School Network as a place where we went for data. So we were able to say 17 states throughout the United States have a farm to school coordinator position in a state agency. Come on, guys, don't you want to be the 18th state?
Gotcha. Will this presentation be available online? Yes, folks, it is recorded, and it will be in our resource database. Can she also share the success matrix that she listed for 2016? Would that be in your presentation, or will you be able to send us a link to something like that?
I can send you a link. So I can send you links for the Lieutenant Governor's Farm to School Initiative. I can send you links for, I can share the P20 Ag Education Report that we submitted to the legislature, as well as, yeah.
Okay, thank you. We'll make sure everybody, you'll get that in your email afterwards. So look for that. Another question for you, Natalie, is on average, how many times have you invested in advocacy for state policy? For example, is this 25% of someone's full-time job, or have you even looked into that?
So the Hawaii Farm to School Hui, which we were called the Hawaii Farm to School and School Garden Hui, and we just renamed ourselves, has a fully funded coordinator position. And it was during this 2015 legislative identification that we realized that we needed somebody who was doing this as their job. So I would say at least 50% of her time is spent around legislative efforts, and particularly around the ledge session and gearing up for ledge.
Gotcha. That's, not everybody has that ability, obviously, but that would be great if we all did. But also, you know, as the network, we're available to help folks all across your state. So, you know, please call on me, and we might be able to you know, do some coordination as well to do, whether it's a legislature lobby day or advocacy day or educational day, depending on your organization, to help folks understand you know, what is going on across the country. I'm actually flying down to Arkansas to do this very thing, to put on a presentation, an educational workshop with the Department of Agriculture and a few other organizations down there to educate their decision makers on what's going on across the country. That's something we can do, just like Natalie did. It's very powerful.
Another thing that I'd like to share is that many of the stakeholders will be at the National Farm to Cafeteria Conference this spring. So we will have a representative from the Department of Health, Child Nutrition Office, School Food Services Branch, Department of Agriculture. The coordinator for the network will be there, and a variety of other network participants. We did submit this as a session that did not get accepted. However, we would be more than happy to have conversations with anyone on or offline with regards to all of our efforts statewide.
Excellent. Someone's asking, how long is your growing season to provide local fruit and veg to schools? I think I know this answer.
365 days a year. That means those pests are there 365 days a year too. But we do have seasonality. So like melons are in the summer. There's some items that are year round, and there is a little bit of diversification that is now beginning to happen within the ag sector with the closing of some monocrops such as sugarcane and some pineapple land. So some farms are really starting to diversify, and we are trying to identify with the Department of Education who's growing what and when, and if they are interested in selling to the Department of Education, and if so, what are some of those roadblocks, and what are some things that we can do to help to minimize some of those real roadblocks as well as perceived roadblocks for selling to the largest purchaser in the state.
Excellent. One other question for me, what type of farm to school economic inequality policies have been proposed? Do you have examples? Yes, there are lots of examples in our legislative survey. If you go to the table of contents where it sort of breaks out, not the table of contents, but the section where it breaks out the different types of policies. One is titled Economic Inequality, and there are many different examples, but just to highlight one, there was one in Illinois called the Urges Government Food Initiative. This resolution urged the governor to coordinate with 6 state entities to create a program that would encourage and empower communities to advance low-cost and high-return strategies to help end hunger and poverty. These resolutions identify the role schools have in providing subsidized meals to children who come from families that exceed the federal poverty guidelines. Specifically, these resolutions encourage the development of community-based food, nutrition, and agricultural initiatives that will contribute to the broader efforts to end hunger and reduce poverty in the state. So setting up a workforce to to look at food insecurity and how to address those through schools is one of the many ways to look at economic inequality in our states and territories. But if you go to that survey, there's a lot more that address what you're looking for. One question. My state, Indiana, is in a group that isn't doing anything much with farm to school, apparently. We applied for a farm to school planning grant at my school district. How can I get in touch with the other interested people in my state? This is Ms. Cagle. Ms. Cagle, please give me a call. We have reached out to many different organizations in Indiana, and we should have a lot of contacts of people wanting to get something moving in farm to school in your state, and reach out. My email is on our National Farm to School website, and if you just click on staff, you can find it easily there. I'm sorry it's not at the questions listed right here, but would love to help you sort of figure out and strategize how to advocate in your state. Any other questions out there? Well, we have 8 minutes left, and I just want to publicly thank Natalie for that very inspiring advocacy plan and overview of what you've done in Hawaii. I wish we all had 365 days of growing season, but we don't. But it doesn't mean there's still not a lot of great stuff folks can do out there all year round, as you know, with the advances in different types of hoop houses and nurseries and agriculture. And hydroponics, and the list goes on and on. There's a lot that folks can still do in their communities to support nutritious food, but also their local agricultural economy and their small and medium-sized farmers in your state. So I'm going to wait 30 more seconds for any more questions, but thank you all for attending. Again, this will be on our resource website, and you'll be able to see it and view it in real time. And we will be sending out an email with those many different types of metrics and web pages you folks have asked for. So I'm not hearing any more questions. I will return 7 minutes of your time, and thank you all for attending.